Well, we've been here before. Cities are burning, cops are overwhelmed, and gun owners are finding themselves in a position where they're saying, I told you so. And that's what we're going to look at today. As we view what's going on in LA, not only through a historical lens, because we already have some references, some things that happened in that exact city with gun owners too, by the way, so we kind of know how these things play out, but we also want to look at it from just a regular gun owner's perspective or a business owner that's a gun owner and their perspective as well. I'm going to talk about the response, the policing, good and bad, and gun owners' role in this entire thing. So I think it's interesting, and I want to hear from you guys. What would you do in this situation? If you're in California, you're a business owner. Do you board up and leave, or do you stay and try to take care of your family, knowing the risk and dealing with it, and hopefully 911 will respond, or do you arm yourselves and stay open too? It's kind of an interesting dynamic of what's going on in California. I want to get your opinion, whatever that may be. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So the LA riots. Okay, we've seen this before in this city. 1992 is the perfect example of how mostly peaceful protest, if you're listening to this, I'm using that all in quotation marks, by the way, how these things very quickly turn into acts of violence on citizens, police, and property. Now, President Trump actually called in the National Guard, and Gavin Newsom is like super upset about this because initial reports was, oh, well, President Trump never called me. Now we know that's actually a lie, right? But what Trump is trying to do at this point is trying to kind of slow the curve of violence and destruction, because we saw this in 2020, right? Tim Walz waited 3 days to call in the National Guard, right? And businesses were already burning at that point. So he waited too long. So now you have National Guard, you have Marines there trying to make sure that people stay orderly. Now let me ask you a question. Do you really think if these protests were actually just that, do you think Trump would send resources there anyways? Like, let's just say they were just protesting in the street. They weren't stopping traffic. They weren't burning things to the ground. They weren't looting and rioting. They were simply protesting. I don't think so. Because see, the problem is the media tries to spin it like, dude, these things are mostly peaceful. But then right off camera, what I imagine is like right off screen, like the rest of the city's burning. So you just kind of point the camera back this way. Hey, look how great we are, guys. Not realizing that you're not the only ones with cameras anymore. We all have them, and we can all kind of report on what's going on and upload it to the internet and boom, get the entire story. It's very clear that people are going to the extreme once again. So now you have a bunch of police and military there trying to keep order. Well, what does that do? Well, that diverts resources to just a few areas, meaning the rest of the city now, what happens if a robbery or other things happen in, well, this part of the city? Well, the response is going to slow down. And we saw this in 1992 with the rooftop Koreans. People are dragged out of their cars and things are burning and stores are looted, gun stores. There was like 1,700 guns stolen during the 92 riots. So the rooftop Koreans, specifically in Koreatown, said, hey, you know what? We're going to take up arms and we're going to protect what's ours. It's a very famous story from that time period, and it relates to exactly what's going on right now, because the rooftop Koreans knew that we can't rely on 911 right now. They're overwhelmed with what's going on in other parts of the city. We got to take it upon ourselves. There's other instances where these people are making decisions. I either have to close down or I have to be armed and stay here this entire time to make sure that my livelihood isn't affected. It reminds me of this video. This was from a couple years back where this vape shop owner, he basically, these two guys walk in, they try to rob him, they take his change jar and he says, hey, take the dollars, just give me the coins. Well, one guy jumps over the counter and he was actually arming himself with a knife. Well, he ends up taking care of business, dragging the one guy out, and a security expert came on when they were covering this news segment. And he's like, oh, you should just let them have these things because they're totally replaceable. Now, part of that is true, right? You have to consider what the circumstances are, right? Just protecting property or protecting yourself. Everything's not always so cut and dry. But in this situation, it's like, are you kidding me, right? This guy was jumping over the counter. You have no idea what he's carrying on his person. He could have been looking to do harm to this shop owner and then steal everything that he has in the store. I covered one of these, this was many months ago, where a gas station owner, he was complying, fully complying with this guy, and the guy still ended up taking his life. So to say, yeah, just, comply and everything's going to be okay, that doesn't always work out. And again, you don't know what somebody's intentions are. But if they walk in with a ski mask, they jump over your counter, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, maybe I'm wrong here, but that's going to be considered self-defense. That is the exact situation the California gun owners find themselves in. But see, this is the same state that looks to restrict every single gun they possibly can. Now it's like pistols, right? Any kind of Glocks, they're just too easily convertible, and they won't allow the new designs in, so they're trying to basically ban all of them. They treat the Second Amendment in California like it is a second-class right, like it is absolutely a privilege. You have to actually ask for permission. We got to make sure that you are mentally stable enough to have these firearms, and if we deem that you are righteous enough, then yes, you can own a firearm, but only certain firearms with mag restrictions, bullet buttons, and the list goes on. And it's amazing because these same politicians will tell you you don't need that type of gun. You're not in some kind of a war. Call the police. They'll protect you. Then when things like this happen, you call the police, you can't get to them because they're busy handling other stuff. The politicians are safely inside of their homes because they're already protected, along with a lot of the elites out there in California, and only the people that chose not to comply are the ones standing there that can actually protect themselves. While the others that unfortunately did comply or don't believe in that right are like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Sitting there completely helpless. Police can deter some things, but they can't be everywhere at once. And when they have situations like this, anywhere, even if this isn't going on, you need to take it upon yourself and be responsible enough to say, hey, I got to train. I need to have a firearm to protect myself at any and all times, because to be quite honest with you, this can happen anywhere. And when it does, you want to be in a position where you know you can protect yourself, your business, your livelihood, and your family. There you go. Gun owners know exactly how this thing plays out. We can look to history to tell us, and here it is repeating itself once again. There you go. Let me know your opinion. If you've ever been in a situation like this, we'd love to hear from you. Leave those things down below in the comments section. Of course, if you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.